So in the new community section of YouTube, I asked if anyone had questions or thoughts that may be on your mind that you might want to hear talked about. So in episode 2, is it an episode? Podcast 2, part 2. In part 2 of the GoHerping podcast, I thought I would kind of go over some of those, but there's a couple that I want to focus on more and see where it goes from there. So let's see how many responses were there. There's 52 comments. Some of them didn't make any sense. I'm not sure if they read what my post said. For example, my post read, basically, do you have any questions or thoughts? Trying to be unique with them. And one person's just gaming channel. That's their entire comment. I don't know what that means. However, there was another, if I can find it. I should have found this beforehand. Jacob Guy said, do you ever worry about your house catching fire with all the heat sources? Because I know I do. Followed by 2 laughing while crying emojis. So I thought I would kind of talk about this a little bit with my closest calls. Because I've had strong heat sources on enclosures for about 5 years now? Maybe a little longer. Probably about 5 years. So I'm going to take this a little more seriously than I think you intended your comment to do, but that is definitely a concern, and it's not something that hasn't happened before. So I've definitely not had anything super severe, but there have been things that happened, and there's other people that I've seen that have had not so fun things. I'm not sure what the goal of this is, whether it's just to share them or to I guess it's kind of a PSA to make sure you avoid doing some of these things if possible. The most recent example, it's not super severe. I guess it could have been if it was more unlucky. I was getting new shelving that could hold about 40 gallon enclosures. Because before I just had Sunny, the vivarium, the 40 ounce vivarium with the bioactive build. That's a very heavy enclosure. It's probably a few hundred pounds. Probably. Yeah, this seems about right. And it was just on kind of like a sketchy fold-out plastic table. So that wasn't really the concern. I mean, it was a concern, and I wanted new shelving anyway. But for the time being, I had Olive, my blue tongue skink. She was directly beneath it, and she has both a heat lamp and a heat mat. That spot's regulated. But there was a heat mat beneath it, directly on the carpet. And I knew it was temporary, so I didn't think too much of it. But I moved the enclosure. I put it on my Instagram story, and there was just a huge yellow spot in the carpet. It's still there. I don't think it's going away. But it was essentially the heat mat burning the carpet away. It was, like I said, it was regulated with a thermostat. It was at the correct temperature. But I don't know if the other side is hotter. I don't think it is. But the heat was enough to, over time, turn the carpet entirely yellow. And when I lifted the enclosure, you could literally smell burning. So it was a bit concerning. Oh yeah, maybe I should really take that whole not putting heat sources on carpet to heart a little bit more, because I didn't expect it to have that effect. I would not be surprised if that happened without it having a thermostat thermostat or whatever, but apparently it can still happen regardless. So that's not really serious, but if it was, I don't know, how much hotter? 20 degrees hotter? I don't know how hot it would actually be to have caused a hazard. It's possible it wouldn't have had a huge problem. It's not like there was oxygen beneath the enclosure. I guess there could be, because carpet's not airtight. But basically, that's just kind of a very recent example, and not a super severe example, but another reason why I make sure every heat source is highly regulated. Another one is, when did I make this video? It was probably over a year ago. I did a video on saving money while making a reptile enclosure. And one of my examples was going with non-reptile brand heat lamps, which I still think that's perfectly fine as long as you follow certain things. Because the reptile ones, they're always made with ceramic around the top, so they can handle higher temperatures without melting or burning. But other companies, just random companies, I don't actually know any names of any. They'll make these lamps for super cheap, between $5 and $10, but they have plastic on the top. Now, it says, I've never seen one that says to put anything over a 60 watt, but this has been considered a hazard. In fact, someone was telling me, I can't remember the name of the store. I can't even find the comment. I'm not sure what it was. There was somebody, you might know of it, so you can let me know below. There were a couple people that had some sort of reptile breeding center or shop or something, and due to, I think it was like a faulty cheap heat lamp or something with too hot of a bulb, it ended up causing a fire and kind of destroying the entire place. So it is possible with those heat sources to have very severe consequences. Like I said, with those, the cheaper ones, with the plastic, I just make sure I usually just use like the LEDs in there. So it's like, at most, the surface temperature is like 90 degrees or something, which is not going to be a hazard. But just being mindful of that. But it's definitely, there's been other circumstances of this happening in the community that I've just seen recently. Like one, you might know, or you probably know who Mike Titula is. When was this? I can't remember when anything happens. Why can I not remember? He did a video though where one of his rack systems with just glass aquariums, it just collapsed and destroyed the aquariums out of nowhere, like nothing that you really could have avoided if you didn't know what was happening. So I guess that's always kind of freaky. One that, I guess a less severe version of that happened with me is this possibly you've seen Shadow, my black rat snake. She was in like a, I don't want to say makeshift, because it was nice. It was put together well and took a lot of time. But it was like a built or DIY enclosure built in an old shelving system. And that was completely fine until it turns out that it was like increasingly getting a larger crack until she escaped, which is possible you saw that video as to when she escaped and why she escaped and how I found her. So I'll try and remember to link that below. But that same shelf, it was not made for reptiles. It was just like a wooden bookshelf sort of thing. And so I didn't put anything super heavy on it. I just had, I think it was one 10-gallon enclosure on each shelving thing. And there were two of those and then shadows on top. But one of the times, just while moving that, all of a sudden the top shelf collapsed. And somehow, I don't know how, but two 10-gallon enclosures managed to smash on top of one another, and neither of them actually broke. Like one fell inside the other, and it just so happened I got lucky enough, the one beneath it, or was it the one above it? One of them, something landed in one of them, like a piece of shelf, and it just so happened to miss the Kenyan sand boa. So I've gotten pretty lucky in the past when it comes to, well, lucky after being unlucky due to just faulty things that you're like not even aware of. But luckily neither might have been severe. There hasn't been any injuries caused by issues like that. And luckily, I guess that's a good thing though, because then it teaches me like, oh, maybe I should stop trying to build sketchy little enclosures out of bookshelves and using carpet as a surface to put a heat mat on. There's one more example I had. So there's an Instagram page that I follow. It's actually an entire reptile rescue. The handle, if you want to see it, is @Faith's Reptile Rescue. And she essentially has her own nonprofit, all with reptiles. Let me see what. As of right now, according to the bio, there's 35 turtles and 7 lizards there. But out of nowhere, her porch collapsed. Which, here, I can pull it up just to make sure I get it right. She said, around 2 o'clock in the morning, there was 30 seconds of constant loud bangs and shattering glass when I realized it was all my tanks and supplies. I guess the thing that's really sucks about all these examples, except for the fact that I put a heat mat on carpet, is they're just completely out of nowhere. It's nothing you would even, well, now it's things I consider. Like, I'm going to be honest, I've thought about just like my entire room collapsing or something a couple times. Because wouldn't that be interesting? But a fun fact, if you didn't know, this is a bit off topic. It doesn't really relate. But when was it? Yeah, it was right when I came into this new house. Franklin, the radiator slider, who's in a baby pool in the corner of the room. I wasn't living here yet. I was just moving all the enclosures the day before. And I just set him up, spent a few hours cleaning it out, filling it back up, conditioning all the water, just the usual stuff. And then I left to go to sleep because I had no bed here or anything here. And then I come back in the morning and the pool's completely empty. And I was like, oh, there's dozens of gallons of water in my bedroom now. Except you really didn't see it anywhere. The carpet was definitely wet in the area, but turns out it dripped all the way through the floor onto the first floor, which I happened to be over the garage, so it didn't like ruin 2 floors. Hey, it's future me here. Sorry for interrupting. I just realized while listening back, I forgot to say how the water got spilled. I had the filter in there as usual, but it wasn't secure, and it could have happened like any day in the past. But today, or that day was today, the Franklin just so happened to push the filter over to the side of the enclosure, so that the lip of the filter could perfectly reach the edge of the enclosure and just start pouring gallons out. I guess like 40 gallons per hour, because that's the speed of the thing. So it wasn't a cracked enclosure. It wasn't like anything faulty. It's just because I didn't have the filter secure as I should have. Okay, sorry for interrupting. Back to the real podcast. I wonder if that actually had an effect on the floor. I doubt it did. But basically, that's like the most weird paranoia things come up, at least for me, especially when there's so many animals in such a confined space where like everything's connected. For example, I keep going off topic. I'm not good without outlines. But if you have any extension cords, like going from multiple enclosures to others or multiple sources of heat things, I would highly suggest you use like the industrial construction ones. In my case, these are the thick orange cords, because these are completely insulated, and I'm sure they're more expensive, but it's definitely worth it to avoid that, because I guess the thing is, of course you're going to care about one animal, but when they're all right in the same area, like if one thing happens, then everything is affected, pretty much. For example, in just like my weird random concerns, it's like, what if the entire floor collapses right now? Like, yeah, sure, whatever, all my gear would fall, but that would also be 20 enclosures falling. And it doesn't even make sense. There's no reason that would happen. But I guess seeing these somewhat unrealistic things happening, like just random shelving collapsing and things like that starting, it is weird to think about. So not that you should be concerned about it. I guess just be mindful about it. There's not really any message or secret meaning behind this. It's just times that I thought that I guess technically something could have gone bad. I'm trying to think. Those are ones that I thought of before recording. I'm trying to think if there's any more now. I wonder if it's bad to have so many cords going to the same wall, though. Because essentially, let's see. Pretty much all my cords go into one thing in the wall, just with different strips and extensions. I feel like that's fine, though. Everything, like, it's good strips, good quality and everything. I always make sure, if you didn't know, you can have, like, if there's an enclosure with water, like a pool or turtle tub or something, to make sure that there's a dip in the cord before it reaches the electricity. So if any water does drip, it's going to drip to the dip in that cord and then just drip onto the floor or whatever, compared to dripping directly into the power source, because I don't think that would be good. Let's see what else. That might be about it for that. Let me know if you have had any close calls or near disasters, maybe. Because I don't necessarily want to put paranoia into everyone, but it's probably good to keep track of the possibilities from basically all the electronics and stuff. Which is kind of funny. I've seen news articles and stuff where there's been like someone potentially dealing drugs or whatever, and you can like light their house up with what's it called? Whatever lights up heat sources and I guess infrared. You can basically just light the house up or light an apartment up with infrared, and then they could just see directly which apartment had like all these spots because they went in and there were all these little heat sources everywhere and heat lamps and heat bulbs. So I guess if any of our houses ever get scanned for that, we're probably going to be raided because it looks like we have a weed farm in our room, when in reality it's just reptiles. At least in my case. I don't know about your case. because I guess a lot of us do grow plants too, so I won't question which plants you have. Well, moving on from that. Actually, before that, I can talk a bit about this podcast again. So this is, quote, attempt number 2. We can just disregard number 1. However, I do have it posted. So I just made a SoundCloud. Well, I already had the SoundCloud. I'm going to start uploading them there. You're going to hear my typing because I don't know how to pull stuff up before recording to see if the first one ever went up. I don't know where else. People mention them going in other places, like Apple Podcasts or something. Problem is I don't have any Apple devices, and I don't know how that works. And then there's also Spotify, but I'm not sure how. I don't really use either of those. I just use SoundCloud, which I'll be honest, it's not very good, but I deal with it because it already has all of my music and playlists. So did it go? It's still processing. I uploaded the first one 6 hours ago. It's only 30 minutes, and it's still processing. And now it says there's a problem playing the track. Well, hopefully they'll be on SoundCloud. But, yeah, what else is... Oh, yeah, other people were mentioning they're asking for more visuals in the podcasts. And I don't know what you're actually looking at right now if you're looking on YouTube. It's possible it's just a still image, honestly, because that's the easiest thing to export and fastest and smallest file. I might get something animated for a little bit more interestingness to look at. But I want to avoid, I don't want to use video or anything because... My pet peeve with some of the podcasts that I listen to is exactly that. I just listen to them. I don't want to have to watch them. So then it can be unclear or confusing when I can't actually look, either because I'm listening just in the background and then I have to pull it up, or because I'm biking or something and I'm listening on SoundCloud. So yeah, I'll probably keep visuals more for things like live streams and stuff. But that is a good point, because I definitely do enjoy the visual sometimes, but I feel like it can kind of be distracting if you don't know what you're actually supposed to be seeing. So I'm just going through the comments again. Again, there's way too many to go through right now, and some are just completely unrelated messages. We can stay on negative topics. How about that? Isaiah Katie said, Katie? I question, it looks like a very simple name, but I question everything I say out loud when it comes to names. They just said, which snake has given you the worst bite? Is bites something to talk about? As long as I don't clickbait it with something bite related. I've definitely taken a fair share of bites. I can see most of the enclosures from where I am right now. So who have I taken bites from? The toads, the box turtle, Franklin, Sunny, Shadow, the sand boa, Ember, Olive. Who else? Is that it? Oh, and then of the Savannah monitor. Luckily, that hasn't been in a while. That was mostly just the first day. And am I forgetting anyone? I think that's all of them. But the worst one is, well, they said which snake is giving you the worst bite. It's not at all a snake. It's Franklin. It hurt a lot more than I expected it to. For some reason, he loves to bite my phone. I think I mentioned that in a live stream or something. I have no idea why. It's like he'll just be sitting there and he'll come up and just attack your phone out of brute force. I don't know if he just doesn't like technology or if it's like the shininess that puts him off, but I can't even tell if he's trying to attack it or bite it, because I don't think of sliders as an attacking animal, unless it's like attacking a male over a mate or something. Do they even do that? I don't know. But his reaction to the phone, I have no idea why that is. Maybe you know. It's the only time I ever even see him open his mouth other than eating. But he came up while I was just holding my phone. I was lying on the floor, and he grabbed onto the back of my hand. I think I can still see a little bit of a scar. It was a couple weeks ago. And the thing is, he wouldn't let go. It's like it was just a couple seconds at first. So I was like, ow, this hurts, and that's out of nowhere. But then every time he couldn't tear my skin off, he would just bite harder and pull his head further into his shell. So I was confident that my chunk of skin, I'm sorry, this is kind of gross. I was confident that my whole, a square centimeter of skin was just going to be gone and he would consume it. That's disgusting. I'm sorry for those visuals. But it was something. I had time to like type it out and message it to someone like, Franklin's biting me right now. It was like 30 seconds. He wouldn't let go, and it's definitely the worst herp bite I've taken. But worse than that are hamsters. Have you been bitten by a hamster? Please don't be bitten by a hamster. There's so much blood. It's so weird how. But the worst snake is Sunny, just because, I mean, worst snake bite, he's not the worst snake. Is Sunny just because he's has the largest head overall. But even that, I would rather get bit by Sunny 5 more times than take a bite from Franklin. So he's a vicious boy. As many people say, he basically controls the reptile room. He patrols it, as you see in every video. Which, by the way, I think some people might have concerns about it, I'm not sure. He does get a lot of basking time. If you might have seen it, I have a bridge that I made for him out of PVC. And he climbs in and out of the pool himself. I rarely see him climb back in the pool. He has sometimes, but he can definitely climb out. But then if I just sit him under the heat lamp, he'll basically just sit there until he either gets tired after a number of hours, or he'll just like sit there until the light turns off. That's usually what happens. Like if he comes down in the morning, or not in the morning, like in the afternoon. No, like in the morning, if I put him up on his thing, he'll just sit there until they go off at night, and then he'll either plop into the water for some food, or to wait for some food, or plop the other way and find somewhere to hide, which I don't really suggest. It's really kind of just a pain at this point, because if I take that, quote, privilege away from him, he'll just get like, he gets very irritated and scratches at everything. But at the same time, it's kind of a pain. You have to like be wary of everything in the room on the floor to make sure he doesn't have anything he can bite, or things like that, or like fall off of, or whatever. I was talking about getting bitten by him. How'd that happen? How'd I get to that? I don't know. Well, to finish it off, we can go a bit more positive, because we talked about getting bitten and burning our houses down. A much more simple question from Bork is, you got any games on your phone? LMAO, no. Fave music, movie, TV, or anything genre or type. For some reason, lots of you want to know more about me. I don't know why. It's pretty uninteresting overall. Well, favorite music you could find, because now I'm going to put the podcast on SoundCloud. I didn't even say the link. It's soundcloud.com/GoHerping, because I have all of my liked playlists there, or all of my liked tracks there. How many? I think I have 700 or 800 tracks liked, which, I mean, don't scroll down too far. But my music changes so often. It's usually around things like, who have I liked the longest and the most consistently? Probably like Mr. Suicide Sheep, which he's not a music maker. He just, or she, I'm not even sure. But they just upload a bunch of music, but it's always really good. So I guess that can give you a general idea. Or things like lo-fi and other weird common stuff now. Movie, that I don't really watch that many movies. It's basically just Studio Ghibli. If it's a Studio Ghibli, I haven't seen them all. Every single time I record anything, my clock starts chirping. Speaking of which, it's midnight now. But yeah, if it's Studio Ghibli, I know I'll enjoy it. I haven't seen them all yet, but of all the ones that I have seen, they're all really good. I'm trying to think which is my favorite. Well, probably like the two Castle ones, Castle in the Sky and Howl's Moving Castle. Those are really good. My Neighbor Totoro. What else? Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke. Basically all of them. And then TV, it's been Adventure Time since, when was it released? 2010. I watched the season premiere of episode 1 probably a few days after it came out, and I have every episode now, and I've seen every episode. It's essentially the only TV show I watch, and it's the only one I have watched. So it's going to be really sad, because it's almost 2018 and the entire show is ending in 2018, which I shouldn't even talk about Adventure Time in this, because I could talk about it probably for a few days straight. So maybe that's what I'll do. At the end of 2018, we can have a live stream special where we just talk about Adventure Time for like 6 hours. but I'll probably just be depressed because it'll end forever. I thought this was going to get more positive. Now we're just talking about more depressing stuff. That's not depressing, though. I'm only sad because it was that good. And if you haven't seen Adventure Time, then you've really missed out. There's still time. I'm not necessarily condoning this, even though I am. You can find every episode online. Just make sure you don't get a virus in the process, which I have a couple of, but it's worth it. And let's see what the time... I haven't actually looked at the time at all. I've been shooting for 26 minutes. Or not shooting, recording audio. I've probably cut a little bit out. I had some pauses just because I had to find the other questions because I'm so unorganized. But, yeah. Thanks to Leland or Indiana Herps and Invertebrates, he demanded that I record earlier than last time. So it's less weird. It's only midnight, so not as late. But I have the most energy at this time of day. I don't know why. But I think that might sum this part up, this entry. I don't know. What do we call these? What do you want them to be called? We'll see. But we're mostly talking about reptiles today. So do you prefer reptile topics? Is this your time you want to get away from reptiles and talk about other stuff? Kind of like the Discord server. We kind of just have that one thing in common, that being liking reptiles. So if you want to join the server, we kind of like break the ice for you. It's like, hey, you probably like reptiles. Welcome. And then we like never talk about reptiles again. We do talk about reptiles. We have designated chats for it. But if you would like, you can go to GoHerping.com/Discord to join that. And then you can listen on SoundCloud. And yeah, whatever else. So I think that'll be it. It's still shorter than I expected. I was thinking my goal time was probably 30 minutes. Or not, maybe over 30 minutes. I don't know. Do you have a preference? Do you like longer or shorter ones? Because 2-hour podcasts I'm not really a fan of because I don't like to finish them in one sitting. But then I kind of forget what's going on. But that should be it. What is the date? I think it's December 15th. Oh, you know what I could have ranted about for 3 hours was net neutrality ending, but I won't get into that. Hopefully it's not over with that. I don't even need to explain that. I'm sure you know what that is. But it was December 15th. Now it's December 16th at 12:04 a.m. Thanks for listening to this attempt at the GoHerping podcast. Let me know what you thought, and let me know if anything you might want to see or hear or have changed or added in the future. But thanks for listening.